Jana, do coaches need long form content to get clients
In 2024?
in
Yeah.
2024?
Yeah, I think they do.
I
I
think
think
they
they
do
do.
too. I think they do too. So that's the topic of today's video. We are obviously both creating long form content in various places. Jana is a stalwart, like blogger, not like blogger, but she blogs for her business and she kills it. You just sent me a win earlier, actually, that you made a sale from your blog
I did. Yeah.
for high leverage content.
So I made someone enrolled in high leverage content, a really brilliant writing coach, actually. And I noticed when I was kind of checking out the stream of things that she'd been on my email list about 2 months. She had opened a couple of my emails recently. But the action that she took directly before she enrolled was that she clicked on the link from an email that I sent sharing my most recent blog post. And this is kind of meta because the
Hmm.
name of the blog post is how to start a blog for your coaching business that books out your client roster or something like that. And it covers the 5 steps, to start a blog. And she had clicked on that link and then checked out the blog uh, directly before enrolling in HLC. And that particular blog post, the call to action in there is to enroll in high leverage content, the paid program. So, like with any marketing, I mean, it's never about one thing. It's always the aggregate of all the different pieces of marketing that you do that help someone feel that trust in you and that demand that you want to be growing in them for your thing, right? If they want the result that your thing helps them with.
Yep.
But it seems that in this case, the actual catalyst, the thing that happened directly before the purchase was that she read the blog post.
It
So yeah,
obviously intrigued her. She's got some thoughts in her mind that this is something she wants to take on. And here she goes. She's off to the
yeah,
races.
yeah. And I can't wait to see what she does. So exciting.
So, when we say that short form isn't cutting it anymore, why do you think that?
I think that these days in 2024 and even for part of 2023 as well, it's not like all of a sudden a switch flipped, right? And it happened
Yes.
when the new year chimed, when the ball dropped. But I think we're really moving into this era, and we've talked about it before, where people who are considering hiring coaches are a lot savvier than they once were.
Hmm.
And the space is more crowded. So it used to be, a few years ago that you could, post a couple of reels a week and they were short form and that's all you really needed, and people would
Hmm.
just buy. Those were kind of like, this is like the golden age in some ways. People really still talk about that and they miss it and they almost think that we're still doing that, right? But I think that things have changed over time, and I believe that these days people who are looking to hire coaches are really looking to your content to see they want like a whole slice of cake all at once. They want you to show them, and you can show them pretty quickly if you're using long form content, certain things. They need to see that you're an expert. They need to see that you have an actual process or system or framework that you take them through. And that helps them trust you, but it also helps them trust themselves to
Yep.
understand the work and to show up and do the work and get the results. Because that's a lot of times why people don't buy, not because they don't trust you, but because they don't trust themselves,
Yeah.
right? So there's other things that they need to see too. And in fact, in high leverage content, I talk about the 9 things that people need to see and hear and understand more deeply to be ready to buy from you or be ready to book a consult call with you and hire you as their coach. So I think that people are looking for a slice of cake, and they're
Yep.
looking for more than just crumbs. And unfortunately, when we're only creating short form content, it's like we're leaving crumbs in places. And there
Yeah.
used to be kind of an analogy where like crumbs were good because you're like bringing people using crumbs toward the big thing. But these days, I just don't think people are. They don't have. They're not. How do I say this? Like it takes too long. Like people think that short form content is faster for some reason, but when you're just giving people a few crumbs here and there, it takes so much longer for them to really feel satisfied by the content and be ready to take that next step with you. Um, so it's not a perfect analogy, but that's kind of like, how I'm thinking about it these days. And I think we need both. I think that short form content can play a certain role in your marketing. And short form content, by the way, doesn't have to be reels. We think of reels, but it doesn't have to be. It can just
Yeah.
be posts on Threads, for example, or Twitter or whatever it's called. But a combination of both is really the way to go. But I think bottom line, and then I'll stop talking, is that people who um coaches, I think, in 2024 who only do short form content and are not taking the time to go deep in their and create and produce and publicize, publish long form
Publish.
content are going to be behind the eight ball. It's going to be harder for them
Yeah.
to give people what they need to see those consults and see those people hiring them. So that's how I feel about it. That's how I see it.
That's all right. And I think I agree. I have never really found success with short form content myself, with short form video or even just like general Instagram strategy. And it could be, the strategy that I was employing wasn't working or whatever. But at the end of the day, anytime I've created long form content, I've converted more people into the places that I need them to go. So paid offers, free offers on my email list are my two main priorities.
Mhm.
Always have been, always will be. So I think if you can create long form content and you can do it in a way that speaks to the audience that you want to speak to and helps them to see what working with you is going to um, come about for them, like what's going to come about it, come out of it, you're just setting yourself up for a long-term sustainable marketing strategy that doesn't feel like you're always chasing trending audios and editing video,
Yeah.
unless you're
Mm.
doing YouTube videos, but you can hire an editor for that.
Well, and the thing about YouTube videos, the way that you create them, the long form versions of YouTube videos, is that, yeah, it takes a little more effort because you have to go on camera, you have to edit, but they're so lasting. YouTube is such a lasting platform, that it's worth it. It's worth
Yeah.
putting all that effort into it. Whereas I always, I've never understood. I get how some people like to do it and it's fun, but I've never understood how short form video on platforms like Instagram, for example, I don't know TikTok, so I'm not going to speak to it. Maybe you can talk about it because I don't really know it, but I don't get how, and I guess TikTok, from what I hear from you actually, is that it can be lasting. But for these really ephemeral platforms where you create something, it takes you an hour or 90 minutes or something to create a really, cool looking reel, and then it just goes away. It's like, you know, even the
Yeah.
stories that people craft are
24
like
hours.
gone after 24 hours. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. Whereas your YouTube videos, people are constantly finding them, months and years later. So,
I actually had someone comment on a YouTube video that was one of the very first ones I published when I started publishing consistently in 2020 last week. And when I saw the thumbnail for it, I just totally cringed and I almost went to the video and hit hide. Oh, it was so hideous. But you know what? The person that left the comment was like, "Thank you so much. This was so helpful."
so don't hide that baby because people are
I'm not
finding it
gonna
and
hide
it's
it.
helpful for them. So,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Yeah. It's so good.
So
Yeah.
as we think about coaching content, is there a combination of short form and long form that we want to focus on?
Yeah.
Does that matter in the strategy? I can tell you what I've been doing here, like on the YouTube channel lately. If you'd like to hear about that, but like I'd like to hear your
Yeah.
thoughts.
Yeah. And so remember, when we say short form, everybody thinks, oh, reels, but that's not necessarily what we're talking about. We're
Yeah.
talking about anything that's shorter, anything that is just giving people, one tiny little sliver of something. So, you know, you and I are both spending a good amount of time on threads these days. And that's
Mhm.
exactly like there's a word maximum,
Yep.
character maximum, whatever. So it literally forces us to create short form content. And, I definitely think short form content is what we were to sort of think of as like top of funnel in some ways. So when someone sees that short form content, we really want them to want more from us.
Mhm.
And that's when the long form content comes into play. So either they're going to find the long form content or we want to point people in the direction of our long form content. We want to be not only creating the long form content and counting on people to find it, but
Yeah.
also sharing it regularly with our audience. And one of the ways I like to share my long form content is by creating short form content. I have two frameworks that I teach in HLC that are the straight teaser framework and the gem pull framework. I like to take the long form and create short form. It's kind of like repurposing it in some ways.
Yeah.
Create short form that leads to the long form. And that's what I mean. Like in 2024, if you're creating the short form and it doesn't lead anywhere, if it doesn't lead them to a long form piece of content and a small but mighty suite of long form pieces of content that give them all those things they need. I think there's 9 things. That's why I teach it that way. It's just going to be such a slow process. But if you can lead them to those deep, thorough pieces that are strategic, they can very easily binge all of that, have
Yeah.
everything they need, and be ready to buy. And that's what I like about having a combination of both short form and long form. So yeah, what about you? I'd love to hear how you're thinking
Yeah.
about short form and long form, especially on YouTube, but wherever you're doing
So
content.
you shared 2 ways that you can essentially like repurpose or however you want to think of it, your long form content into shorter pieces. What I'm doing on YouTube is expanding.
Mm,
So, um, what I'm doing is I publish a long form video and the comments start to roll in. And if someone asks a really great question, I will then create a short form video response. So
good.
I'm expanding the life of that conversation. I'm bringing people back in. I'm re-engaging them. I'm continuing the conversation. And what I'm seeing this do on YouTube is continue to push the video because of the comments and the engagement on the overall video that helps to push the video out further. It also helps to quickly build trust with those people in the audience. Like I have mentioned in the past, video just builds trust so much faster for me, in my own opinion, for my business than just relying on blogs. So it's building trust even that much faster because they're getting a response and they're getting a video from me
Yeah.
explaining the concept. And I feel like I can explain myself better on video than I can via text comments. So I'm actually getting feedback in video comments saying, wow, I've never seen a creator go so far as to make short form YouTube shorts answering comments. And I'm like,
Yeah. And I feel
yes,
like that's so good because it's so on brand for you. And people who find you that way and decide to invest in becoming part of your membership, your amazing membership. Um, oh my gosh, I just blanked on the name of your membership, Pin Profit
Pin Profit
Academy.
Academy.
They can expect more of that, right?
Yeah,
They can expect to be now getting the same kind of treatment, except they'll be a higher priority for you if they're inside the membership. So if someone who like, for example, someone who's not very accessible to their members, that's not you because you're very accessible to your members. But if they were creating content like that, it would almost be like it wouldn't make sense because people would be expecting more. But because you do, it's perfect. Like it leads
yeah,
them to understand who you are and what your teaching style is. You're really being that's like when people say like, oh, be authentic online, like you're being authentic, you're being
yeah.
yourself and showing people who you are. And when they get inside your membership and now they're even a higher priority than they are if they're just commenting on your free content, like that's a beautiful like synergy. So I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do that across lots of platforms. I send video responses oftentimes because I find it just faster to get my words out,
Yeah.
just to reply with a video. So that is just an integral part of um, you know, my YouTube strategy this year now is going to become replying to comments with short form video if they fit
Mm.
and they necessitate a short. To me, and necessitating a short just means I can explain it so much better via video than
Yeah.
a comment.
Yeah.
So
Curious, in your community, when you encourage people to think about investing some time in creating long form content, and when we say long form content, we're talking about blog posts, YouTube videos that are the long type, right? Podcast episodes are another great example of long form content. Even live streams. I mean, like these live streams we do are pretty casual, but some people do more like solo live streams, either on
Mhm.
Instagram once a week or Facebook groups, that kind of thing. That can be like basically long form content, although I prefer to encourage people to put their long form content on their own platforms, but that's another story, right? Um, when you're encouraging your community members to do that, what types of, do you get any like pushback on it or any objections? Like what people, reasons why people like don't want to create long form content or what feels like what gets in their way of doing it?
Actually, we have an active thread in my Facebook community right now, and I'll just read you some of the responses. So one
Mhm.
of the deep dives that my community is really interested in is blogging. They want to learn more about blogging and how to um, create content in a long form way. So I wrote blogging deep dive. Tell me what, um, basically like tell me what you want to know more about when it comes to blogging. And
Nice.
one person says how to write effective blog posts that convert. I've been hung up on getting my blog posts done and I don't really resonate with writing long blog posts. Can you write short and medium posts and still have the same effect? I'm having trouble understanding how not to provide just information in the posts, but how to get many wins for my post and stand out in the industry. Someone else goes on to say, I want to know how to streamline my writing process. What is Google Search Console and how to use it? Can I do quarterly content planning? How to do that? Someone goes on to say, I
Mm.
want to write effective blog posts. What is the length? Do I need to include graphics? How to do a call to action? Making it pretty, and then a workflow to share it far and wide. That would help us community members that work full time.
Mhm.
Someone went on to say photos in the blog post. That is a really hot topic. Like, what graphics do you include? If you don't take your own photography, how do you include graphics and should you?
Hmm. So interesting.
Um, yeah. So those are the things that are happening there, and that's going to help me to frame a deep dive. I have someone coming in March to talk about Facebook ads. So I'm probably going to do the blogging deep dive in my community in March
Mm.
alongside the guy that's coming to talk about Facebook ads. And then um, that'll give me some more time to really create a cohesive
Yeah.
kind of map for these people that are really wanting to get started. Because I mean, I have the
Hmm.
content strategy system. It's just a mini course on finding keywords, using those keywords, writing a blog post, how to outline a blog post, those kinds of things. But I haven't gone into what they're talking about.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, all those things that you mentioned, a lot of them really sound very familiar to me too. They are a lot of the things that I've learned my audience is asking when they're thinking about starting a blog. They
Yeah.
get nervous. There's certain things that sort of get in the way, roadblocks. One of them is like, well, if I take the time to do it, because they realize it's probably going to be a little bit more time consuming to write longer form content instead of shorter form content,
Yeah.
will it convert? You know what I mean? And that's the energetic piece that is really tough for a lot of people. They feel like if they don't know what to write already to convert, and now they're just going to write longer things that don't convert, they're worried that they're going to spend more time and still not see the results. So I know I hear that a lot, and I read a lot of emails about that and about how my offers solve that. I also hear people getting really hung up on keywords. So I have a whole different philosophy than you
Yeah.
do about SEO and keywords. So that's a whole nother story. I also hear a lot of people saying, but do people even read blogs anymore?
I saw you post that in our
Yeah.
thread back and forth. Do people read
Hmm.
blogs? And I will say they do. I have
They
data to
do.
back it up.
Right. They do. I mean, the story I told when we first started this live about the woman who purchased my program this morning because she was reading a blog post of mine. And my answer to that question, I remember this adage. I always think of like Don Draper and Mad Men when I talk about this quote, because like some advertising guy, and of course I don't have it off the top of my head who it is, and that's terrible because we really should give him credit. I'll make sure when I do um the description, the show notes for this live that we're doing right now, I will include his name and give him credit. I don't even think he's alive anymore, but some like Don Draper kind of advertising guy smoking a cigarette, probably in an office with like a
Marvel lights.
yeah. Was famous for saying like, no, people don't read ads because he works at an ad agency. He says people don't
Yeah.
read ads. They read what interests them, and sometimes that's an ad.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel about blog posts as well. No, people don't just read blog posts. They don't like wake up in the morning and go, I'm going to find some blog posts to read, you know? They read what interests them. And so if we get in front of them when they're either looking or when they're having conversations about this thing, right? And what we have is a solution and it interests them, or it just captures their attention because, it doesn't have to necessarily be a solution. There's lots of different ways, 9 ways actually. I teach 9 ways to do this in my course. But, if we get in front of them with a message that feels relevant to them,
Yeah.
that's when they're going to go over and listen, or listen if it's a podcast, watch if it's a YouTube video, read if it's a blog. So that's really the key, is just making sure we are using a real strategy that's based on what people actually want, what's relevant for them,
Yeah.
and writing blog posts that are relevant. And that's when people are going to read them because they care about them. They're relevant to them because people don't read ads. They read what they care about or what is interesting to them. And sometimes that's an ad. Sometimes it's a
Sometimes
blog
it's an
post.
ad.
Yeah.
So
I'll get a cigarette. Sometimes it's an ad.
the
I'm gonna get
guy's
like
name,
sued by the estate of this guy, and they're gonna be like, he did
no,
not smoke. Like slander.
Howard Luck Gossage. I Googled it
Thank
really.
you. Oh my God,
People
thank you
don't
so
read ads,
much.
they read what interests them. Sometimes it's an ad. This
Thank
could be
you. You're
more
such a
relevant today than 70 years ago. And
yeah,
I agree.
yeah. Thank you. You're such a good wing woman. You just like totally kept me from like
Got
being
you.
so bad and not giving credit where credit was due to Howard.
No, and I think that's really relevant to why we create content in the way that we do. So a lot, and I think I maybe just posted this on Instagram stories on Monday morning. I was watching a John Oliver episode, really old one, like probably 9 years old,
Ah,
because
love John Oliver.
he's on a break until February, so I always fill my
Oh,
time when he's on breaks with his old stuff.
his
And
older
I
stuff.
watched this video about student loan debt, and I
Ooh,
was like,
yeah.
oh, this is like highly relevant for right now. But then I started watching it and I realized like this isn't actually relevant to today's conversation for student loan debt. It kind of is, but he was talking about how colleges use pain point marketing to get people to take all these big loans, and then they graduate college with tons of debt. I
Mhm.
myself have $28,000 in student loan debt still. And um, I was laughing because he was talking about pain point marketing and how these colleges use this methodology. And he'd had people that were previous employees at colleges that were kind of whistleblowers on this on the show talking about it. And I think there's a right way and a wrong way to go about pain point marketing. I do employ some pain point marketing in my own business.
Yeah,
But
me
this
too.
is something you can easily do with blog posts. People have a problem with how to schedule their content natively on Pinterest for free. I have a blog post that's going to help them do that. I'll also have a YouTube video, but I'm not at the end like scamming. Like the only way you're going to really know how to do this is if you buy my thing. Give me your money and I'll teach you the real way. Like that's not what I'm doing. And I think we can effectively do this in blog post, talk about those pain points, address them,
And solve
tell
them.
people to solve them,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then provide that bridge
Hmm.
to the next step. Like you want to take this a step further, come join us.
Yeah, 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 definitely. And when I talk about my 9 pillars, the 9 different types of content we create, one, not all of them, but one of them is exactly that. It's something that solves a problem. So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I I think the conversation is relevant right now because people are exhausted of keeping up with these short form video platforms. Um,
Yeah, I
Twitter is
mean,
not what Twitter used to be. You used to be able to amass a large audience on there and reach hundreds of thousands of people so easily. And now your content's put next to like neo-Nazi content or like porn ads. It's weird. Like that's difficult to navigate for people that are there. People have huge communities and don't know what to do. Threads, people
mhm,
are getting lots of traffic from threads. So I think that's a potential.
mhm.
Short posts on LinkedIn. I find that platform to be really weird and confusing.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, the thing is like no one needs to do all of those platforms. It's
Right.
just about finding one or two maybe that feel really good to you,
Yeah.
and that work for you, and then doing them consistently. So, an ecosystem where you have a couple of places you're creating short form content that leads to your long form content, and making sure that your long form content is designed strategically to convert your audience to clients.
Yeah.
That's to me, that's the system that I like to follow. And it's not the only way to do things, but it's what has always worked for me for the last almost 8 years in business. It's what I've helped clients with, and eventually it's what I decided to lean into in terms of teaching, because it's always been how I've been able, to consistently convert audience to clients and audience to students. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So talk to me about this goldfish message you sent me.
oh yeah, that's the other thing I was going to say is a lot of times I hear people say like, oh, but it's sort of similar to do people read blogs? It's another kind of
Mhm.
shade of that question. It's like, but what about the goldfish thing? I read that people have an attention span shorter than a goldfish now. And like that was just like this huge myth. And
Yeah.
basically what happened, I'll give you like the quick kind of story, is that there was an unsubstantiated rumor in 2015. And so
Oh,
this was like
wow.
almost 10 years ago. Microsoft repeated an unfounded statistic that humans paid attention for an average of 8 seconds, which is one less than scientists had found that goldfish pay attention. So goldfish pay attention for 9 seconds. And Microsoft said, oh, there's this statistic. It's science. Humans pay attention for an average of 8 seconds. So now we have a shorter attention than a goldfish. But the fact of the matter is that even though people loved it and they picked it up and they repeated it, I remember I was training in real estate at that time. I wasn't a real estate agent, but I was training real estate agents. And literally every conference that I went to that year in 2015, 2016, 2017, even though it had already been debunked as wrong, as fake news, essentially, what we call fake
Hmm.
news these days, everybody repeated it for years because they loved it. They were like, you have to catch people's attention, and if you don't do it in 8 seconds, they're out. And no one's going to read anything longer than 8 seconds and all this, right? So, but what happened was basically it was, I'm looking at my notes because I want to make sure I get it right. Basically, it wasn't true. Microsoft had gotten that statistic from an unreliable source, and they ended up taking it down from their site within days after they published it because they knew that it wasn't right. So all sorts of publications, including Forbes, there's an article in particular that I have bookmarked, reported at that time that that stat that everyone was going crazy over was fake. But because it had taken a hold in our culture and everybody had repeated it so much and it was in the news, it was like, speaking of John Oliver, like John Oliver could have done one of those like montages he does where like everyone, all the news people are like, humans now pay attention for only 8 seconds. That's 1 second shorter than a goldfish. 1 second shorter than a goldfish. Less than a goldfish. If anyone's a John Oliver fan, you know what we're talking about. But basically, it had taken hold and it just wasn't true. So the point is that it's not true that you have 8 seconds. People are interested in your content if it's relevant to them. And if it's really relevant and you're helpful, they want the details. They're craving depth. They want more from you, not less, if what you're writing matters to them. So, or what you're talking about in your YouTube videos, your podcast episodes matter to them. So get rid of that worry about, the goldfish really is kind of like what I wanted to say to our listeners. If you're thinking about it, if it bugs you, if it's in the back of your mind and you're like, I don't know, what about the goldfish? No, not true.
No.
Never was.
If they're really interested in solving their problem, they're going to consume content, which brings me to another thread I saw earlier this week, and it's been spread around threads of people basically pushing back on it. And it was a thread that was, someone said, like, people who become clients do not binge your content before becoming clients. And I was like, that's a lie.
What?
Lie, 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 liar.
Wait. I want to understand. What was the point of the post?
Just a hot take, I guess.
Oh,
Here, I'm going to read it to you exactly what it
okay.
says
Please,
because I
please.
shared it again yesterday. Um,
I want to understand if there's any merit to this argument or if there is even a cohesive argument here.
this is what they said.
Coherent.
People don't know this, but the more someone consumes your stuff, the less likely they are to become paid clients. Like, it's the opposite of that for me. And
Right.
everyone on Threads was piling on this guy and sharing their own take. And I know for a fact that that's not true because just yesterday I watched 3 hours of YouTube videos from two creators that were having
Hmm.
conversations together. And then right after that 3 hours, like in the 2 weeks leading up to this, I've also consumed more of these people's content. I went and spent $1,500 on this guy's course, and I
Yeah.
consumed the entire course yesterday while I was working.
Wow. Amazing. I'll have to ask you about
So,
that after this session,
like,
in our private chat. I want to know what it was. But yeah. Oh, what was I going to say? Shoot, it just popped right out of my head. We are talking about. Oh, I see the point. I think it's getting at another fear that people have, speaking of pain point marketing. I know there
mhm,
are some people that worry that if they blog or if they do long form content, YouTube videos,
mhm,
podcast episodes, that they're not going to be able to do that. They're not like longer means more detailed.
mhm.
And they think more detail means they're going to have to give away everything for free
Yeah,
and that people aren't then going to want to pay them for what they offer. So, and I get that. Like, I understand that. It's never been true for me. It's never been true for you. But I know I understand it is a logical fear that some people have. And so it's important to talk about the fact that you do have to have a strategy. Like there, you do have to be clear. And I remember you and I talked about this a long time ago. I actually have a document that's like 3 columns that talks about my 4 pillars of Pinterest marketing, what I used to teach more avidly or more, regularly. I still teach it a little bit, but and underneath either of all of those 4 pillars, I had one column that talked about what I share in my free content, one column that it was like, okay, I only talk about these things in my gated content, like for my email list and webinars, things people have opted into. And then these are the things I only share in my course. And so as long as you're clear on the difference, I think you're good. And I know you've always been very, very like you're an open book when it comes to sharing. And that's always worked really well for you as well. So we have slightly different models, but like, no, no, it's not true that the more people binge your content, the less likely they are to spend money with you. It's absolutely the opposite, as
yeah,
long
I
as you're
don't,
being strategic about it.
yeah. I don't think, I mean, most people that are just sharing, maybe day in the life content, maybe, influencers that are sharing content or whatever, I could see where, even people that are getting influenced for brands or whatever may not purchase certain products or whatever. I don't know. I know there are influencers I watch and I've never bought anything they've ever suggested. I just enjoy watching them because they're entertaining.
Well, and sometimes influencers don't really need you to buy their thing because what they're
Yeah,
they're monetizing in a different way, like we've talked about before.
yeah,
They want you to be watching their videos and watch another video on YouTube and watch another free video and watch another free video because they're
right,
getting paid on views.
right.
So I don't know, that might be somewhere in that person's argument too. They might be thinking like,
I don't know.
if you're an
One sentence hot take.
influencer, yeah, yeah, who knows? I mean, that's the thing about these one
No.
sentence hot takes is you don't know what they're really trying to say, but I think it's so funny that I want to see that post because it sounds like you're saying everybody was piling on him and being like, no, sir. People
Yeah,
binge my
there's a lot
content
of
and buy
people
my
that
stuff all the time.
a lot of people quoted him and posted their own threads because he only has 7 replies on that one thread.
Mhm.
So like it didn't even get very far on his own, but you know, I think if you do a really good job of talking to your audience, your messaging is good, you've done the work of creating offers people actually want to buy, which I'd like to circle back around to that related to something you mentioned earlier. People have this fear that they're going to write long form content and it's never going to convert. But there's so much more work that comes to, creating long form content. I think you do need to have some offers at some point that you're either selling organically or through ads that are converting. People are
Mhm.
interested in the thing. You need to have some validation there. Um, One of the questions I get often is, how do you know what to share free and paid? And then another question I get is, um, how to write content for products that will
Mhm.
convert. So
Yeah.
I get these questions.
Let's write those down because those would be good YouTube video topics.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think there's
I mean, these
something,
live stream topics.
yeah. I think there's something to understanding, brand messaging and your offers and what makes people want to buy them and making sure they're validated. Um, I probably would never write a blog post for a product that I'm I've never sold one before ever. Like it's a brand new product. I'm probably not going to write a blog post on it because I want to try and sell it first just to see. And that can be
Yeah.
where some short form video content can help you to validate. I like using short form video content to validate ideas
Hmm.
of whether or not maybe I want to create a long form video on
Yeah.
it. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, on one level I agree with you. I also do have a little bit of a different take on it, a different point of reference. And again, as we've talked about, we've said this so many times over the years, you and I, that we've done content together. It has to do with who we serve and who our
Yeah.
audiences are. And that's why sometimes we have different takes on things. We don't disagree,
Mhm.
but we, just see things differently because different things work for different types of businesses, different monetization methods, different type of people. And a
Yep.
lot of the people in my audience, coaches, service-based businesses, strategists, they are in their like second act.
Yep.
A lot of them come to their new coaching business, sort of new, or their new business as an online service provider or strategist, having a lot of very, very rich experience serving clients or serving their people in some way.
Yeah.
And so very often creating a suite of long form content, um, especially starting with my expertise types of posts, because I have my 9 pillars fall into two categories, expertise and conversion. Starting with that expertise piece can really help people articulate their special sauce, even if they haven't technically had like sold a lot of what they're selling with that content yet because they're coming to the table with so much already. Um, so that's just my take on it too. But I do agree that there's a certain level of clarity that you get once you've sold something a few times that does like help you really up level your content, which is also one of the reasons I love blogs because you can always go back and update blogs. I love that about blogs, about written content. Oh, you're on mute.
I just published a YouTube video yesterday on Pinterest analytics. I haven't published a
Mm,
video on that topic since like 2020. Obviously, the dashboard's changed a lot over the years. It's kind of morphed and it's
yeah.
almost back to where it was originally at when I published it
Totally.
a
It really
video.
is. I was just thinking that the other day when I was looking at it with a client. I was like,
Yeah,
this Pinterest dashboard looks like it did. It's like a throwback. It's like
4 years
it's
ago.
like it was 5 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, so I published a video on that, updated that topic, kind of explained a little bit more in detail about the different numbers that you'll find there. So oftentimes if I publish updates, the blog post will also get updated with current day information because I always like to create blog posts with the majority of my YouTube videos. And then, the video goes on in there. And
Hmm.
that's a way to keep people updated that way and keep people coming back because
Yeah.
things are ever changing. So yeah, I like keeping things up to date.
Yeah. Well, and you've had to really create and refine a strategy that allows you to do that because
Mhm.
Pinterest, which is the main thing you teach about, although you also teach about other marketing, other aspects of marketing,
Yep.
um, and digital products and things like that. But Pinterest is an ever-changing platform. I mean,
Yeah.
literally ever-changing. Like I was on a strategy call with a client, was it yesterday or the day before? And I went to show her something and it had changed. I was like, oh, and I mean, I had seen this a week ago. Like it's
And it
constantly
changed.
changing. Yeah. And like next week it'll do it again. And I told her that I was like, I just want to like, kind of manage your expectations about this because it
Mhm.
had to do with what data Pinterest was pulling from her images on her website. And
Mm,
that changes like every 5 minutes. Every 5 minutes they're changing. Like it seems like where they pull from and how it shows up and all that stuff. So it's so frustrating. But anyway, I'm on a tangent here. My point is you've had to figure out a really good system for keeping things updated without pulling your hair out.
yeah.
Um, and not everyone has that nuance. I happen to work with a lot of like health and wellness and life coaches. And a lot of their content can be more evergreen
Hmm.
because, the science can change about these things, but they're thinking the human psychology, that comes into like the mindset pieces that come into coaching, which inevitably is so much about what coaches really are helping people with.
Yeah.
Um, that doesn't really change as much. So creating evergreen content isn't quite as challenging for them as it is for you. Luckily, you're a very sophisticated woman and you figured out a really good system for that. So I will say, if anybody's dealing with an evergreen platform that you're creating content about, do what Heather does. She's got a really good system for that.
I
I
think,
I did not. I feel like I didn't when I was writing more about Pinterest, but
well, things do go out of date on the website. And I think people just understand that platforms change and,
mhm,
they give some grace for that. I know I understand that as well. I always try to look at dates. That's why we update blog post with the current date once it's been updated, that
mhm,
way you do know for sure when you're looking at it that it is up to
mhm.
date.
Yep.
It drives me absolutely batty when people on YouTube or their blogs just add the new year, but they don't ever actually update any of the content. And it's out of date. Like, it's not
Yeah.
current and relevant, but they're doing
Mhm.
it because it's getting traffic or whatever. So they
Yeah.
don't
And there
want
are,
to lose that.
yeah, there are very few people teaching Pinterest that really keep their content up to date. You're one of the elite, really.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Hmm.
Well, I think we answered the question. You
Yeah.
need long
And
form
more and more.
content.
Yeah. You need long form content. In 2024, people are more savvy. They don't trust people as easily. They need to look at your blog or your long form content place and either watch it or at least skim it or eyeball it to see that you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Then that you're not fly by night, that you've been doing this a while. That's what a content library is really good for too. And you need to be able to go deep in order to really show people those things that they need, that
Mhm.
they're scanning for consciously and subconsciously in order to feel ready to buy. So that's what long form content does. And I think people need it in 2024. I don't think short form's cutting it. Short form alone is no longer cutting it.
No, I'm not watching someone's entire TikTok feed to validate,
Yeah.
that's just
No, no.
it's not the place for me. So, if you need help with long form content, if you need support in that, Jana's high leverage content course is definitely top notch. Get on her email list. I think you're closing the cart right now, right?
Yeah, so if anyone's watching this in real time or in the next couple of days, the doors to high leverage content are closing February 1st. And I'm doing
Mhm.
that because I'm about to produce another summit and I need to turn my attention to that. And
Yeah.
also because there are like three things I want to update in the course before I reopen the doors in Q2. So
Yeah.
I don't know exactly when I'm going to reopen in Q2, but I will reopen in Q2 with a couple of little upgrades, and that'll be after the summit is produced and out there, and I've done that. So yeah.
There's
Oh,
a
you're
comment right
muted.
now that says uh, best AI generated tool for content. And I'm actually test piloting one right now called First Draft AI.
Mhm.
The guy that actually produced the SEO course that I recommend on this YouTube channel, I've talked about on this channel before. Stupid Simple SEO, Mike made his own tool. And he's made it that actually where it formats with his SEO strategy. And I feel like it's really a decent output, actually. It's called First Draft AI if you want to check it out. I'm not an affiliate. I'm literally just beta testing it right now for my own content to see what it can do. But that's the one that I'm paying for it.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I guess we'll see.
And I teach ChatGPT. So inside high leverage content, I provide ChatGPT prompts inside each of the 9 content outlines. And they're totally optional. I have some students who my student Kay doesn't use it at all. She was just telling me, she's like, nah, it's not for me, and that's fine. You
Yeah.
can still create high converting content inside HLC without them. And then I have some students, I was just talking to my a student, Allison, who's a life coach, who loves them. And she's really starting to use them a lot. So, but
Fantastic.
they go into the outlines. And yeah, I just use ChatGPT because I think that we have to kind of like lead our content with our brains, but that ChatGPT we can lean on it to help us draft and refine. So
Yeah, I love that. So, Tech Short, I hope that helps to answer your question if you're still here watching. If you guys have any, feedback or follow up on that, then we would love to hear from you in the comments of this video. We are chatting next week about what to include in your newsletter. And then,
Yep. Like emails, what to put in
yeah,
your emails.
your
Mm.
email newsletter. So come back and take a little peek for that. Learn about what you should be sending to your newsletter. Maybe it could be blog posts. We'll just have to have that conversation and see where it goes. Okay,
All right. Good, good
that's it
talk.
for now. Bye.
Bye.
And we're out. Okay.